The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty hotel, and Zelda Vaughn clutched her worn carpetbag with trembling fingers, knowing that somewhere in Deadwood, South Dakota, a man waited to marry her sight unseen, and she prayed he would be kinder than the family who had spent 23 years telling her she was worth less than the dirt beneath their boots. The August heat of 1878 bore down on her black traveling dress as she stepped onto the wooden sidewalk, her legs unsteady after 3 weeks of travel from Boston. The town sprawled before her in a chaos of hastily constructed buildings, all weathered wood and false fronts, with the constant sound of hammering echoing from the hills where miners sought their fortunes. She had read the advertisement in the Boston newspaper 6 times before gathering the courage to respond. Rancher seeking wife, must be hardworking and of good moral character, will provide comfortable home and respectful partnership. The words had seemed like a dream compared to her reality as an unpaid servant in her uncle's household, where her aunt reminded her daily that she was a burden, a mouth to feed, a girl with no prospects and no value. When her uncle had announced his intention to marry her off to his business partner, a man of 60 with wandering hands and whiskey breath, Zelda had written her response to the advertisement that very night. Now she stood in a town that looked like it might blow away in a strong wind, searching the crowd of rough-looking men for someone who matched the description in the letters. Tall, brown hair, answers to Kieran Zimmer. She had received only 3 letters from him, each one brief but polite, explaining his ranch was 10 miles outside of town, that he raised horses and cattle, that he hoped she would find the territory to her liking. Miss Vaughn. A deep voice cut through her anxious thoughts. She turned to find a man who matched the description, but somehow exceeded it in ways the simple words had failed to capture. He stood well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against a clean chambray shirt. His brown hair curled slightly at the collar, and his face bore the tan and weathered look of someone who spent his days under the western sun. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a warm hazel that studied her with what appeared to be genuine concern. "Yes, I am Zelda Vaughn." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. He removed his hat, revealing more of his sun-streaked hair. "Kieran Zimmer. I am pleased to meet you, Miss Vaughn. I hope your journey was not too difficult." She wanted to laugh at the understatement. 3 weeks of cramped stages, terrible food, lecherous fellow passengers, and nights spent sleeping sitting upright had been more than difficult. But she had endured worse. "It was tolerable, thank you." His eyebrows drew together slightly as if he sensed the lie but was too polite to call her on it. "You must be exhausted. I thought we might stay in town tonight, let you rest, and head out to the ranch in the morning. I have arranged for you to have a room at the hotel, and we can meet with Reverend Walsh this evening if that suits you. The wedding." Of course. That was why she had come all this way. She was to become Mrs. Kieran Zimmer, wife to a stranger, bound by law and God to a man she had met mere moments ago. Her stomach twisted with anxiety, but what choice did she have? She could not return to Boston. She had no money for passage, and even if she did, her uncle would only force her into that other marriage, the one that made her skin crawl. That would be acceptable, she said, forcing herself to meet his eyes. Kieran studied her for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he could see right through her carefully maintained composure. "Miss Vaughn, I want you to know that you are not trapped. If you find after meeting me that I am not what you hoped, I will pay for your passage back east or wherever else you wish to go. I did not bring you all this way to force you into an unwanted marriage." The kindness in his words nearly undid her. She blinked rapidly, refusing to cry in the middle of the street. "That is very generous of you, Mr. Zimmer. Kieran, please." He offered a small smile. "Shall I take your bag?" She handed over the carpet bag that contained all her worldly possessions. One change of clothes, her mother's Bible, a photograph of her parents who had died when she was 6, and the 3 letters from the man now walking beside her toward the hotel. The Grand Hotel was hardly grand, but it appeared clean and well-maintained. Kieran spoke quietly with the clerk, then led her upstairs to a small room with a bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the main street. "I will be staying down the hall," he said, setting her bag on the chair. "Take whatever time you need to rest. The dining room serves supper at 6 if you are hungry. Otherwise, I can bring something up to you." "No, I will come down." She did not want to appear weak or troublesome. Her aunt had drilled into her head that she must be useful, must not be a burden, must earn her keep. "Zelda." He paused in the doorway, and she realized it was the first time he had used her given name. "You do not have to do anything you do not wish to do. If you want to rest, rest. If you want to eat alone, I will have food sent up. This is not a test." After he left, she sank onto the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. Not from sadness exactly, but from the overwhelming strangeness of kindness. She could not remember the last time someone had asked what she wanted, had told her she could rest, had treated her like her preferences mattered. She washed her face in the basin, changed into her only other dress, a faded blue cotton that had been mended so many times it was more patches than original fabric. Her dark hair, she pinned up as neatly as she could without a proper mirror. When she looked at her reflection in the small glass above the washstand, she saw what she always saw. Plain features, too thin, nothing special. Worthless, her aunt's voice echoed in her mind. At 6 o'clock she made her way downstairs, her heart pounding. Kieran stood when he saw her, which startled her. Her uncle had never stood for any woman, claiming it was a foolish Eastern affectation. "You look rested," Kieran said, though she knew it was likely a polite lie. The meal was simple but good, better than anything she had eaten in weeks. Roast beef, potatoes, carrots, fresh bread. She tried not to eat too quickly, tried to remember her manners, but her hunger won out. "When did you last have a proper meal?" Kieran asked quietly. She froze, a piece of bread halfway to her mouth. "I ate on the stage." "That is not what I asked." His voice remained gentle, but there was steel underneath. "Zelda, I can see your collarbones through your dress. When did you last have enough to eat?" Shame burned through her. Of course he had noticed. Of course he would find her lacking already. "My uncle's household was very frugal." Frugal. He said the word like a curse. "Did they starve you?" "I was fed sufficiently." The lie tasted bitter. Her aunt had often sent her to bed without supper as punishment for imagined slights, and even when she was allowed to eat, she received the smallest portions. Kieran's jaw tightened, but he did not press further. Instead, he signaled the waiter and ordered more food. "Eat what you want. I will not judge you for being hungry." She wanted to protest, to insist she was fine, but the kindness in his eyes made her throat tight. So she ate slowly, savoring every bite until she felt fuller than she had in months. Afterward, they walked to the small church at the edge of town where Reverend Walsh waited. The ceremony was brief and businesslike. Zelda spoke her vows in a voice that shook only slightly, and Kieran slid a simple gold band onto her finger. When the Reverend pronounced them married, Kieran kissed her forehead gently, a chaste touch that somehow felt more intimate than anything she had experienced. They walked back to the hotel in silence as the sun set over the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. At her door, Kieran stopped. "I will stay in my room tonight," he said. "You have had a long journey and I do not wish to rush you. We are married in law and before God, but that does not mean you owe me anything you are not ready to give." Zelda stared at him, searching for the trap. Men did not say such things. Men took what they believed was theirs. You do not want to consummate the marriage. A faint color rose in his cheeks. I want you to be comfortable. I want you to know me before we share a bed. Is that so strange? Yes, she said honestly. In my experience, men do not concern themselves with what women want. His expression darkened. Then you have known the wrong sort of men. Get some rest, Zelda. Tomorrow I will take you home and show you the ranch. We will have plenty of time to learn about each other. She lay awake for hours that night, turning the gold band on her finger, trying to understand the man she had married. Every instinct told her to wait for the cruelty, for the moment when he would reveal himself to be like her uncle, like all the men she had known. But a small, fragile hope had begun to bloom in her chest, the possibility that perhaps Kieran Zimmer was different. The next morning dawned clear and hot. Kieran had arranged for a wagon, and he helped her up onto the seat with a steadying hand. They rode out of Deadwood heading west, into rolling hills covered in prairie grass that rippled like waves in the wind. The ranch is called the Double Z, Kieran said as they traveled. I started it 5 years ago with money I saved from cowboying. It is not large, but it is mine. Well, ours now, I suppose. What made you decide you needed a wife? The question had haunted her since she first read his advertisement. He was quiet for a moment, his hands steady on the reins. Loneliness, I suppose. And I wanted to build something more than just a ranch. I wanted a home, a family. I wanted someone to share my life with. He glanced at her. What made you answer the advertisement? Desperation. The word came out before she could stop it. I am sorry. That was too honest. No. He reached over and squeezed her hand briefly before returning his to the reins. I appreciate honesty. Were things truly so bad in Boston? She had not planned to tell him. She had thought to maintain the fiction that she came from a respectable family who simply had fallen on hard times. But something about the openness in his face made her want to trust him. My parents died of cholera when I was 6. My uncle took me in, but only because it would look bad if he did not. He put me to work in his household as a servant. My aunt made it very clear that I was a burden, that I should be grateful they did not throw me into the streets. I did all the cooking, cleaning, mending, and caring for my 3 cousins. I was never paid. I was fed little and worked constantly. When I turned 23, my uncle informed me he had arranged a marriage for me to his business partner, a man old enough to be my grandfather who already buried 2 wives. She did not look at Kieran as she spoke, could not bear to see pity or disgust in his eyes. I knew if I married him, I would likely die young like his other wives. So when I saw your advertisement, I wrote to you. I thought anything had to be better than that. If you turned out to be cruel as well, at least I would be in a new place, away from people who had spent years telling me I was worthless. The wagon rolled to a stop. Kieran turned to face her fully, and when she finally forced herself to meet his gaze, she found his eyes bright with anger but not at her. Listen to me carefully, Zelda Zimmer. His voice was low and intense. You are not worthless. You are not a burden. What your family did to you was cruel and wrong, and I am sorry you endured that. But you are here now, and I give you my word that I will never treat you as they did. You are my wife, my equal partner in all things. This ranch is as much yours as mine. What I have is yours. And if I ever make you feel less than precious, I want you to tell me, because that would mean I had failed as a husband. Tears streamed down her face before she could stop them. You do not even know me. How can you say such things? I know enough. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. I know you are brave enough to travel alone across the country to escape a bad situation. I know you survived years of mistreatment and are still standing. I know you answered my advertisement honestly and came here trusting that I might be a decent man. That takes courage, Zelda. That takes strength. Those qualities are not worthless." She wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "I am sorry for crying. Do not apologize for having feelings. You are allowed to cry, to be angry, to feel whatever you feel." He clicked his tongue at the horses, and they started moving again. "I meant what I said last night. This marriage can be whatever we make it. I hope in time we can build something real, something based on trust and mutual respect. But we have to start somewhere, and I want to start by being honest with each other." The ranch came into view over the next rise, and Zelda caught her breath. It was not large or fancy, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. A sturdy wooden house with a wide porch, a barn, a corral where horses grazed, and beyond that, rolling grassland as far as she could see. "It is wonderful," she said softly. Pride flickered across Kieran's face. "It is home. I hope you will come to think of it that way too." He helped her down from the wagon, and she noticed again how gentle his hands were, how careful he was not to hold her too tightly or too long. He showed her through the house, which was clean but sparse. A main room with a fireplace and a kitchen area, a bedroom, and a small loft. "I know it is not much," he said, sounding almost embarrassed. "I was planning to add on another room or two once I had saved more money. We can make whatever changes you like. It is more than I ever expected to have." She ran her hand over the smooth wooden table, noting the care that had gone into its construction. "Did you make this?" "Yes, I am not much of a carpenter, but I do my best." He watched her explore the space. "There are chickens out back, and a vegetable garden that has been struggling since I am better with livestock than plants. I was hoping you might have a better hand with it. I kept a garden at my uncle's house." She moved to the window to look out at the yard. "I would be happy to tend this one." Over the next few days, they fell into a tentative routine. Kieran rose early to tend the animals and work on the ranch, and Zelda threw herself into making the house a home. She cleaned thoroughly, mended his clothes, cooked proper meals, and spent hours in the garden coaxing the struggling plants back to health. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk as the sun set, learning about each other in slow increments. She discovered that Kieran had grown up in Missouri, the youngest of 7 children. He had come west at 18 seeking adventure and opportunity. He loved horses more than cattle but kept both because it made financial sense. He read when he could, mostly dime novels and newspapers, but he admitted he was not much of a scholar. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh despite herself. In turn, she told him about her mother, who had taught her to read and sew before the cholera took her. About her father, a clerk who had loved poetry and used to recite verses to make her giggle. About the long years after, which she glossed over because they were too painful to examine closely, but they still slept in separate rooms. Kieran took the loft, insisting she should have the bedroom. He never pushed, never suggested they should consummate the marriage. And while Zelda was grateful for his patience, she also found herself growing confused. Did he not find her attractive? Was he regretting his choice of bride? 2 weeks after her arrival, she was hanging laundry when 3 riders approached the house. Kieran was out checking the fence line in the north pasture. The men dismounted without waiting for an invitation, and something about their swagger made Zelda nervous. "Well, well," the tallest one said, looking her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. "Zimmer finally got himself a woman, about time. Can I help you, gentlemen?" She kept her voice steady. "Where is Zimmer?" another asked. "We have business with him." "He is working." "If you would like to wait, I can offer you some water." The tall one laughed. "Hear that, boys? She wants to offer us water. What if we want something more? They moved closer and Zelda backed toward the house, her heart hammering. She had made it to the porch steps when Kieran's voice rang out across the yard. "That is far enough, Dalton." The men turned to find Kieran riding up, his rifle resting across his saddle, not quite pointing at them but close enough to make his meaning clear. "We were just being friendly to your new bride," Dalton said, but he stepped back from Zelda. "Friendly would be staying on your horses and keeping a respectful distance. What do you want? Heard you might be willing to sell some horses. We need good mounts." "I might be willing to sell to someone else, but not to you. We have done business before, and I remember how it ended." Kieran dismounted but kept himself between Zelda and the men. "I suggest you ride on." Dalton's face darkened. "You cannot refuse to do business with us. We have money." "I can refuse to do business with anyone I choose. This is my land, and you are not welcome on it. Leave." For a moment, Zelda thought they might try something, but then Dalton saw how Kieran's hand had moved closer to the rifle, and he apparently thought better of it. The three men mounted up and rode off, but not before Dalton called back, "You are making a mistake, Zimmer." After they disappeared over the rise, Kieran finally turned to Zelda. "Are you all right? Did they touch you?" "No, I am fine. They just frightened me." She was shaking, and she hated herself for it. Kieran took her hands in his, chafing them gently. "I am sorry. I should have warned you about Dalton and his friends. They have a small spread to the east, and they make their living as much from stealing as from ranching. I sold them horses once, and they tried to claim the animals were lame to avoid full payment. I will not do business with them again." "Will they cause trouble?" "Probably not. Dalton is a coward at heart. He makes threats but rarely follows through." But his expression was troubled as he looked toward where they had ridden off. That night, Kieran did not climb to the loft. Instead, he settled onto the floor near the fireplace with a blanket. "What are you doing?" Zelda asked from the bedroom doorway. "I want to be down here in case they come back." "You cannot sleep on the floor." She hesitated, then forced herself to say what she had been thinking for days. "Kieran, we have been married for over 2 weeks. You do not have to treat me like I am made of glass. I am your wife. You can share the bed." He looked up at her, the firelight casting shadows across his face. "Zelda, I do not want you to feel obligated." "I do not feel obligated. I feel confused." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Do you not want me? Did you change your mind about this marriage?" He was on his feet in an instant. "No. God, no, I want you. But I know you came here running from a bad situation. I know you married me because you had no other choice. I did not want to take advantage of that. I wanted to give you time to see that I am not like your uncle or that man he tried to force you to marry. I already know you are not like them." She took a tentative step closer. "You have been nothing but kind to me. You make me feel safe. You make me feel like I matter. You do matter." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "You matter so much, Zelda. I look forward to coming in from work because I know you will be here. I find myself thinking about you throughout the day, wondering what you are doing, if you are happy, if you need anything. This ranch felt like a house before you came. Now it feels like a home. Then why do you keep yourself apart from me?" "Because I am afraid." The admission seemed to cost him. "I am afraid that if I touch you, you will flinch. I'm afraid you will see me as just another man trying to take something from you. I'm afraid I will lose this tentative trust we have been building." She took his hand and placed it over her heart. "I am not flinching. I trust you, Kieran. I want this marriage to be real." He kissed her then, softly at first, then with growing passion as she responded. When he lifted her and carried her to the bedroom, she went willingly, eager to finally close the distance between them. That night, they truly became husband and wife, and Zelda discovered that physical intimacy could be tender and joyful rather than something to be feared. In the weeks that followed, they grew closer in every way. Kieran taught her to ride, patiently guiding her through her fear until she could handle a horse with confidence. She taught him which herbs grew wild nearby and could be used for cooking and medicine. They worked side by side, building their life together one day at a time. The garden flourished under her care, producing more vegetables than they could eat. She started preserving the excess, filling the shelves with jars of pickles, tomatoes, and beans. The chickens began laying more eggs once she figured out they were being disturbed by a fox, which Kieran trapped and relocated far from the ranch. 3 months into their marriage, Zelda stood at the stove making stew when a wave of nausea hit her so hard she had to grip the counter. Kieran was beside her in an instant. "What is wrong? I do not know. I felt fine a moment ago." She pressed her hand to her mouth as another wave hit. He led her to a chair. "How long have you been feeling poorly? This is the 3rd morning in a row." Her eyes widened as she did the calculation. Oh, he knelt beside her chair. "Oh, as in you think you might be with child. It is possible." A smile tugged at her lips despite the nausea. "Probable even." Kieran let out a whoop of joy that startled her. He pulled her into his arms, then immediately loosened his grip. "Sorry, I did not mean to squeeze you. Are you happy about this? I should have asked that first." "I am happy." She realized as she said it that it was true. A year ago, she could not have imagined feeling joy at the prospect of bringing a child into the world. But now, married to a man who loved her, living in a home that was truly hers, the idea of a baby filled her with hope rather than fear. "Are you?" "I am thrilled." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "We are going to be parents. We should go into town, see the doctor, make sure everything is well. We do not need to rush. I am fine." But he insisted, and 2 days later they made the trip to Deadwood. Dr. Marsh confirmed what they suspected. Zelda was about 2 months along, and if all went well, they would have a baby sometime in May. As they left the doctor's office, Zelda spotted a woman across the street watching them with cold eyes. "Who is that?" Kieran followed her gaze. "That is Patricia Dalton, Silas Dalton's wife. Ignore her." But Patricia crossed the street, planting herself in front of them. "So the rumors are true. Zimmer got himself a mail-order bride." "Mrs. Dalton." Kieran's voice was cool. "Excuse us, we have business to attend to." "I am just curious what kind of woman responds to an advertisement like that." Patricia looked Zelda up and down with obvious disdain. "What kind of desperate, worthless creature sells herself to a stranger?" The words hit Zelda like a physical blow, echoing her aunt's voice so perfectly she actually took a step back. "That is enough." Kieran's voice was hard as iron. "You will not speak to my wife that way." "I will speak however I please. Everyone knows women who become mail-order brides are damaged goods. No one else would have them, so they get shipped west to fool some lonely cowboy. My wife is worth 10 of you, Patricia Dalton." Kieran stepped closer, and the other woman actually backed up. "She is brave, hardworking, kind, and she makes me happier than I have ever been. While you spend your days spreading malicious gossip, she is building a home and a life. Now get out of our way before I forget I was raised to be polite to ladies, though I use the term loosely in your case." Patricia huffed and stormed off, and Kieran turned to Zelda. "Do not listen to her. She is a bitter woman who enjoys hurting others." But the damage was done. All through their shopping and the ride home, Patricia's words echoed in Zelda's mind. Worthless, desperate, damaged goods. The same things her aunt had said, now confirmed by a stranger. Maybe everyone in Deadwood thought the same. Maybe Kieran would eventually realize he had made a mistake. She grew quiet over the next few days, and Kieran noticed. "Talk to me," he said one evening as they sat on the porch. "You have been withdrawn since our trip to town." I am fine. You are not fine. Is it what Patricia said? Because she is poison, Zelda. Her opinion means nothing. What if she is right? The words burst out before she could stop them. What if I am damaged? What if I am worthless? You could have married someone from town, someone respectable with a family and connections. Instead, you got a woman with nothing, a woman whose own family found her so lacking they worked her like a slave. Kieran pulled her to face him, his hands gentle but firm on her shoulders. I am going to tell you this as many times as I need to until you believe it. You are not worthless. You are priceless to me, you understand. Priceless. I would not trade you for any woman in Deadwood or anywhere else. You are exactly who I hoped you would be and more. How can you say that? Because it is true. Before you came, I had a ranch. Now I have a home. Before you came, I ate burned beans and slept alone and wondered if this was all life had to offer. Now I wake up next to the woman I love. I eat proper meals at a table set with care. I look forward to every evening because I know I will spend it with you. And now we are going to have a child together, which is more happiness than I ever imagined. You love me. Her voice came out in a whisper, his expression softened. Of course I love you. I thought you knew. I have loved you since the day you told me about your garden, and your eyes lit up talking about coaxing life from the soil. I loved you when you laughed at my terrible joke about the stubborn horse. I loved you the first time you called this place home. I love you more every single day. Tears streamed down her face. I love you too. I did not think I was allowed to. I thought you might see it as presumptuous. Zelda. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. You are my wife. You are carrying my child. You are allowed to love me. I hope you do. I hope you will for the rest of our lives. She kissed him then, pouring all her relief and joy into it. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I am sorry I doubted. I am still learning to believe that good things can happen to me. Then I will spend every day showing you they can. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. We are a family, Zelda. Nothing Patricia Dalton or anyone else says can change that. Winter came early that year, with snow falling in November and temperatures dropping well below freezing. Kieran worked hard to ensure the livestock were protected, and the house was stocked with enough wood to keep them warm. Zelda's belly grew round with the baby, and Kieran treated her like she was made of spun glass, though she insisted she was perfectly capable of her normal work. I am pregnant, not dying, she said with exasperation when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry. I know, but I worry. The doctor said you need to be careful. The doctor said I need to be sensible, which I am being. Now let me do my work. But she appreciated his concern, even when it frustrated her. It was so different from her aunt, who would have worked her until she collapsed and then complained about her weakness. Christmas came, and Kieran surprised her with gifts. A bolt of beautiful fabric for a new dress, a book of poems he had ordered from back east, and a rocking chair he had spent weeks building in the barn when he thought she was not paying attention. For when the baby comes, he explained, I wanted you to have a comfortable place to sit with our child. She had made him new shirts and knitted him a thick scarf and gloves, but her favorite gift to him was a drawing she had worked on in secret. She had never been much of an artist, but she had done her best to capture the ranch house with the mountains in the background and the two of them standing on the porch. This is beautiful. Kieran studied it carefully. I did not know you could draw. I am not very good at it. But I wanted to capture this time, this place, so someday we can look back and remember when it was just the two of us starting out. It will not be just us for much longer. He pulled her close, or as close as her belly would allow. But I will always treasure this time. This is when we became a real family. In February, when the snow was piled high and the wind howled around the house, Dalton and his men tried to steal some of Kieran's horses. Kieran caught them in the act, and there was a tense standoff in the barn. Zelda, hearing the commotion, came out with Kieran's rifle. "I suggest you leave," she called out, the gun steady in her hands despite her fear. "The sheriff will be very interested to hear about this." Dalton looked at the pregnant woman holding a rifle and apparently decided discretion was the better part of valor. "This is not over, Zimmer." "Yes, it is." Kieran's voice was cold. "If I see you on my land again, I will shoot first and ask questions later. And my wife is a better shot than I am, so I would not test her either." After they left, Kieran turned to Zelda. "Where did you learn to handle a rifle? You taught me, remember? Last summer when you were worried about wolves near the chicken coop." She lowered the gun, her hands shaking now that the danger had passed. "I did not know if I could actually shoot someone, but I was not going to let them hurt you or steal from us." He took the rifle and pulled her into his arms. "You are the bravest person I know." "I am terrified most of the time. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting in spite of it." He kissed the top of her head. "But please do not take such risks when you are carrying our child. If something had happened to you, I could not bear it." "Nothing will happen to me. We are in this together, remember." Spring arrived slowly, the snow melting to reveal the first green shoots of new grass. Zelda grew larger and more uncomfortable, but she refused to stop working. The garden needed planting, the chickens needed tending, and there was so much to prepare before the baby came. In early May, on a morning when the sun was just beginning to warm the earth, Zelda felt the first pains. Kieran rode hard to town to fetch the doctor and Mrs. Henderson, a woman known for her skill in helping with births. By the time they returned, Zelda's pains were coming closer together. The labor lasted through the day and into the evening. Kieran stayed by her side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, offering what comfort he could. When she screamed during the worst contractions, he never flinched or told her to be quiet. "You are doing so well," he kept saying. "You are so strong. I am so proud of you." Finally, as the sun set, the baby was born, a boy healthy and loud with a shock of dark hair in his father's nose. "A son," Dr. Marsh announced. "Congratulations." Kieran cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. When Mrs. Henderson placed the cleaned and swaddled baby in Zelda's arms, she felt a surge of love so powerful it took her breath away. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I am your mama. He is perfect." Kieran touched the baby's tiny hand and the infant gripped his finger with surprising strength. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names during the long winter evenings. "I was thinking Thomas after my father, Thomas Zimmer." "Thomas Zimmer." Kieran tested the name. "I like it. Hello, Thomas. I am your papa and I promise I will do everything in my power to give you a good life." The first weeks with a newborn were exhausting. Thomas needed to be fed constantly, and he did not sleep for more than a few hours at a stretch. Zelda was sore and tired, but every time she looked at her son, she felt grateful beyond measure. This tiny person was hers. He would never be told he was worthless. He would never be treated as a burden. He would grow up knowing he was loved and valued. Kieran was a devoted father, walking the floor with Thomas when he fussed, changing his diapers without complaint, making sure Zelda had time to rest. He sang to the baby in a surprisingly sweet voice, silly songs he made up about horses and cows that made Zelda smile. One night when Thomas was about a month old, Zelda woke to find Kieran's side of the bed empty. She found him on the porch, holding the baby and looking up at the stars. "Could not sleep?" she asked, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the cool night air. "I did not want to wake you." "Thomas was fussing, so I brought him out here." Kieran looked down at the now sleeping baby. "I was just thinking about how much my life has changed in a year, A year ago, I was alone, wondering if I would always be alone. Now I have a wife I love more than I thought possible, and a son who makes me want to be a better man." Zelda leaned against him, and he put his arm around her, careful not to jostle the baby. "I was thinking something similar. A year ago, I was planning how to escape a terrible future. I had no hope that things could be different, and now I have everything I never dared to dream of. Do you ever regret answering my advertisement? Wish you had chosen a different path?" "Never." She turned to look up at him. "This is exactly where I am supposed to be. With Thomas, building this life. I would not change a single thing." He kissed her softly. "Neither would I. Well, maybe I would go back and tell Patricia Dalton to mind her own business sooner." Zelda laughed. "I think you handled that perfectly." They stood there in the quiet night, the three of them together, and Zelda realized she was completely happy. Not just content, not just grateful, but genuinely happy in a way she had not thought possible for someone like her. As summer arrived and Thomas grew bigger and more alert, life settled into a pleasant routine. Zelda worked the garden with Thomas sleeping in a basket nearby, or, when he was fussy, strapped to her back in a carrier Kieran had fashioned. The ranch prospered, with several successful horse sales bringing in good money. They were able to add on the extra room Kieran had planned, creating a proper nursery for Thomas. One afternoon in July, Zelda was in town buying supplies when she encountered Patricia Dalton again. The other woman looked her up and down, then at Thomas in Zelda's arms. "I see you have spawned," Patricia said. "I suppose Zimmer is stuck with you now." Before Zelda could respond, Mrs. Henderson appeared at her elbow. "Patricia Dalton, you are a mean-spirited gossip, and everyone in this town knows it. Mrs. Zimmer is worth 10 of you. She is a good wife, a loving mother, and a kind neighbor. Meanwhile, you spend your days spreading poison and making everyone around you miserable. Now move along before I forget my Christian charity and say what I really think of you." Patricia huffed and left, and Zelda turned to Mrs. Henderson with surprise. "Thank you, but you did not have to do that." "Yes, I did. I am tired of watching that woman hurt people with her cruel words." Mrs. Henderson patted Thomas's head gently. "Besides, I have known you for several months now, and I have nothing but good things to say about you. You are raising a beautiful boy, and you are making Kieran happier than I have ever seen him. That is all that matters." Zelda felt tears prick her eyes. "It means a great deal to hear you say that." "Well, it is the truth. Now come have tea with me before you head home. I want to hear all about how Thomas is growing." "Over tea, Mrs. Henderson introduced Zelda to several other women, and for the first time, Zelda felt like she might be making friends. They asked about Thomas, admired his chubby cheeks and bright eyes, and invited her to join them for a quilting circle that met every other week. When she told Kieran about it that evening, he smiled. "I am glad you are making connections in town. I want you to be happy here, to feel like this is truly your home." "I do feel that way, but it is nice to have friends too. I never had friends before. My aunt did not allow me to socialize." "You can do whatever you like now. You are not under anyone's control but your own." He bounced Thomas on his knee, making the baby giggle. "What do you think, Thomas? Should your mama join the quilting circle?" Thomas burbled happily, and they both laughed. That winter was milder than the previous one, and they were better prepared. Kieran had built a proper shelter for the livestock, and they had plenty of supplies laid in. Thomas was walking now, toddling around the house and getting into everything. He was a happy child, quick to smile and laugh, and he had his father wrapped around his tiny finger. On Christmas morning, Zelda woke to find Kieran already up, cooking breakfast. "What are you doing?" "I wanted to give you a morning to sleep in." "Thomas is playing with his new blocks in the parlor." He flipped a flapjack expertly, "Merry Christmas, my love." She kissed him. "Merry Christmas, but you did not have to do this." "I wanted to. You do so much for us every day, I wanted to give you something special." He plated the food and set it on the table. "Besides, I have another surprise for you after breakfast." After they ate, he led her outside where a beautiful mare stood in the corral, a red ribbon tied around her neck. "She is yours. I have been training her for months. She is gentle and smart, perfect for you." Zelda was speechless. "Kieran, this is too much." "It is not nearly enough. You deserve everything good, Zelda. I wish I could give you the world." He took her hands. "This past year and a half has been the best of my life. You and Thomas are everything to me. I wanted you to have your own horse, something that is just yours." She threw her arms around him. "I love you so much. I love you too, always." Time passed in a blur of happy days. Thomas grew into a bright, curious 3-year-old who followed his father everywhere and adored his mother. Zelda discovered she was expecting again. And this time, in the spring of 1881, they welcomed a daughter they named Sarah after Kieran's mother. Sarah was different from Thomas, quieter and more observant, but just as loved. Kieran doted on his daughter, carrying her everywhere and declaring she was the most beautiful baby ever born. "You said the same thing about Thomas," Zelda teased, "and I was right both times. We make beautiful children." He kissed Sarah's forehead. "Though they get their beauty from their mother." The ranch continued to prosper. They added more land, more horses, and eventually a small herd of cattle. Thomas loved the animals and showed a natural talent for handling them. Sarah preferred the garden, following her mother around and learning about plants. One evening when Thomas was 5 and Sarah was 2, Kieran came in from work to find Zelda teaching the children to read from her mother's Bible. He stood in the doorway watching them, and Zelda looked up to find his eyes suspiciously bright. "What is wrong?" "Nothing. Everything is right." He sat down beside them. "I was just thinking about what you said when you first arrived about being told you were worthless, and now look at you. You are teaching our children to read. You are passing on your mother's legacy. You are building exactly the life you deserve." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We are building it together. I could not have done any of this without you. We saved each other, I think." He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "You saved me from loneliness, and I like to think I saved you from people who did not value you as they should have. You did more than save me. You showed me what love is supposed to look like. You showed me that I deserved to be treated with kindness and respect. You made me believe I was worth something. You are worth everything." He said it with such conviction that even after all these years, it still made her heart swell. "You are priceless to me, always." Years continued to pass in contentment. They had one more child, another son they named William, who was born in 1883. The ranch became one of the most successful in the area, known for the quality of its horses. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who loved working with his father. Sarah became an excellent horsewoman despite her quiet nature, and William was still young but showing signs of having inherited his father's charm. Dalton and his men had left the area after one too many run-ins with the law. Patricia Dalton had moved away after her husband died, and Zelda never heard from her again, which was fine. She had more important things to focus on than old grudges. The quilting circle had become one of her favorite activities, a chance to socialize and build friendships with other women. She was no longer the mail-order bride who some people whispered about. She was Mrs. Zimmer, respected rancher's wife, good mother, and valued member of the community. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1888, Kieran took Zelda into Deadwood for a special dinner at the hotel. They left the children with Mrs. Henderson, who was delighted to spoil them for an evening over steaks and potatoes. Kieran raised his glass. to 10 years of marriage, to the best decision I ever made, placing that advertisement in the Boston newspaper, to the bravest woman I know, who was willing to travel across the country to escape a bad situation and build a new life, and to the future, whatever it may bring, as long as we face it together. Zelda clinked her glass against his. To the man who saw value in me when I could not see it in myself. To the husband who treats me as an equal partner. To the father who loves our children with his whole heart. And to the life we have built together, better than anything I ever imagined. They drank, and then Kieran reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I know we do not usually exchange gifts for our anniversary, but I wanted to give you something special. Inside the box was a beautiful locket on a gold chain. When she opened it, she found 2 tiny photographs. One of their wedding day, taken by a traveling photographer who had been in Deadwood that week. The other of their 3 children, a recent portrait they had commissioned. So you can keep us all close to your heart, Kieran said, just as you are always in mine. Tears streamed down her face as he fastened the locket around her neck. It is perfect. Thank you. Thank you for saying yes all those years ago. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy. Thank you for making my house a home and giving me a family. Thank you for being exactly who you are. That night, as they lay in the hotel bed, Zelda thought back to the frightened young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach 10 years ago. That woman had been so broken, so convinced of her own worthlessness, so afraid of what the future might hold. If she could go back and talk to that younger version of herself, she would tell her that everything was going to be all right, better than all right. She would tell her that the man waiting in Deadwood was everything he claimed to be and more. She would tell her that she was about to discover what it meant to be truly loved and valued. She would tell her that the ranch would become more than a home. It would become a sanctuary, a place where broken things could heal and grow strong. But most of all, she would tell her that she was not worthless. She never had been. The people who said such things were wrong, blinded by their own cruelty and smallness. She had always been valuable, always been worthy of love and respect. It had just taken the right person to see it and reflect it back to her until she could see it herself. "What are you thinking about?" Kieran asked, his voice drowsy. "How much I love you, how grateful I am for everything we have built together, how happy I am." "Good," he pulled her closer. "Because you deserve all the happiness in the world. You are priceless to me, Zelda. Always." She smiled in the darkness, holding those words close to her heart where they joined all the other precious memories they had created together. "And you are priceless to me." The years that followed were filled with the normal joys and challenges of family life. Thomas fell in love with a girl from town named Emma, and they married when he was 22. They built a house on the far side of the ranch property, and Thomas took over more of the day-to-day operations, allowing Kieran to slow down a bit. Sarah met a young veterinarian named Daniel who came to the area to set up practice. He fell in love with her quiet strength and her way with animals. They married when she was 19 and they lived in town, but she visited the ranch often. William, their youngest, showed a talent for music and spent hours practicing the piano they had purchased for the house. He talked about going to college in the East to study music, and Kieran and Zelda encouraged him to follow his dreams. In 1895, Thomas and Emma gave them their first grandchild, a girl they named Zelda after her grandmother. Holding her namesake, Zelda felt a profound sense of completion. This tiny person, born into a loving family, would never know what it was like to be told she was worthless. She would grow up cherished and valued, secure in the knowledge that she was loved. "Your first grandchild," Kieran said, standing beside her as she held the baby. "How does it feel?" "Perfect. Everything feels perfect." She looked up at him, this man who had given her everything. His hair was streaked with gray now, and there were lines around his eyes, but he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. More importantly, he was still the kindest, the most patient, the most loving. I never imagined my life could be like this. Like what? So full, so happy, so loved. She smiled at him. You told me once that I was priceless to you. I want you to know that you are priceless to me too. You gave me a life I never dreamed possible. You gave me a home, a family, a reason to wake up every morning with hope instead of dread. You gave me yourself, and that is the greatest gift I ever received. He kissed her forehead gently. We gave each other those things. We built this life together, brick by brick, day by day, and I would not change a single moment of it. As the new century approached, the Double Z Ranch was one of the most respected in South Dakota. Kieran and Zelda, now in their mid-40s, had slowed down somewhat, but they still worked the ranch with the help of their children and a few hired hands. They had expanded the house again to accommodate visiting grandchildren, of which there were now 3. On quiet evenings, they would sit on the porch as they had so many times before, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. Sometimes they talked, sharing memories or making plans for the future. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, simply enjoying each other's presence. One such evening in the summer of 1899, Zelda was in a reflective mood. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not answered your advertisement? Kieran considered the question. I suppose I would have placed another one, or maybe I would have stayed alone. But I cannot truly imagine it because you did answer, and everything that has happened since stems from that one brave choice you made. It did not feel brave at the time. It felt like desperation. Bravery often does. He took her hand, running his thumb over her knuckles, a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. But you were brave, Zelda. You took a chance on an unknown future because you believed it had to be better than what you were leaving behind. And you were right. We were both right. You took a chance on me too. Best gamble I ever made. He pulled her close. I got a partner, a friend, a lover, a mother for my children, and the great love of my life. That advertisement was the smartest thing I ever wrote, she laughed. It was very straightforward, not much poetry in it. I am not a poet, I am a rancher. I write like I talk, plain and simple, but the important parts were true. I wanted a partner, someone to build a life with, and that is exactly what I got. As the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Zelda reflected on the long journey that had brought her here. From the frightened girl in Boston who believed she was worthless, to the woman she had become, confident and loved and valued. It had not always been easy. There had been hard times, difficult seasons, moments of doubt and fear. But through it all, she had Kieran beside her, reminding her of her worth, showing her what real love looked like. In 1900, they celebrated their 22nd anniversary quietly at home, surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Thomas and Emma's family had grown to include 3 children now. Sarah and Daniel had 2 boys. William had gone to college in Chicago but came home for the celebration, bringing with him a young woman named Alice, whom he planned to marry. The house was full of noise and laughter, children running everywhere, the sound of multiple conversations overlapping. Kieran pulled Zelda into the kitchen for a moment of relative quiet. This is what I dreamed of when I placed that advertisement, he said. Not just a wife, but a family, children and grandchildren filling our home with life and love. You gave me all of this, Zelda. We gave each other this. She straightened his collar, a wifely gesture she had performed 1,000 times. I could not have built this life without you. You showed me what was possible when someone truly loves you. That night, after everyone had gone to bed or returned to their own homes, Kieran and Zelda sat on the porch one last time. The night was warm and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. "You ever regret it?" Kieran asked suddenly. "Coming west, marrying me, the life we have built here?" "Never, not for a single moment." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "This is exactly where I belong, with you in this place we have made ours. You are my home, Kieran, you always have been. And you are mine." He kissed the top of her head. "You are priceless to me, Zelda. From the moment you stepped off that stagecoach until my last breath, you will always be priceless to me. And you to me," she whispered. "Always." They sat there under the stars, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life together out of nothing but hope and determination and love. The ranch spread out around them, a testament to their hard work. Their children and grandchildren were evidence of the love they shared, and the future stretched ahead, full of promise. Zelda Zimmer was no longer the girl who had been told she was worthless. She was a woman who knew her value, who understood that worth is not determined by the cruel words of others, but by the love we give and receive, by the lives we touch, by the legacy we leave behind. And what a legacy it was! A ranch that would pass to her children and grandchildren. A name that meant something in the community. But most of all, a love story that proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take a chance on happiness, even when you have been taught to believe you do not deserve it. As they finally went inside, Kieran's arm around her waist, Zelda sent up a silent prayer of thanks. For the advertisement she had answered all those years ago. For the cowboy who saw value in her when she could not see it in herself. For every moment of joy and struggle that had brought them to this place. For the life they had built together, brick by brick, day by day, year by year. She was no longer that frightened mail-order bride who arrived in Deadwood with nothing but a worn carpetbag and a heart full of fear. She was Zelda Zimmer, beloved wife, devoted mother, proud grandmother, and cherished member of her community. She was a woman who had learned that her worth was not determined by the cruelty of others, but by the love in her heart and the life she chose to live. And she was, now and always, priceless. The seasons continued their eternal cycle, and the Double Z Ranch prospered under the combined efforts of the Zimmer family. In 1905, Kieran and Zelda celebrated their 27th anniversary, a milestone that felt more significant than any that had come before. They were in their 50s now, still active but aware of the passage of time in a way they had not been in their younger years. William had returned from Chicago with his wife Alice, and they had settled in Deadwood, where William taught music at the school. They visited the ranch every Sunday for dinner, a tradition that had become sacred to all of them. Sarah and Daniel's veterinary practice had grown successful, and they were training their eldest son to take over someday. Thomas and Emma were now the primary operators of the ranch, with Kieran serving more as an advisor than an active worker. One afternoon in the fall, Zelda was in the garden, putting it to bed for the winter, when she heard a wagon approaching. She straightened, one hand on her lower back, and was surprised to see a young woman climbing down, a carpetbag in her hand and uncertainty written across her face. "Can I help you?" Zelda called out. The young woman approached hesitantly. "I am looking for Mrs. Zimmer, Mrs. Zelda Zimmer. I am she." The woman's face flooded with relief. "My name is Margaret Foster. I came from St. Louis to marry a rancher named John Patterson. But when I arrived in Deadwood, I learned that Mr. Patterson had died 3 weeks ago from a kick to the head from a horse. I have no money to return home, and I do not know what to do. The women at the church said you might be able to help me. They said you came here as a mail-order bride too." Zelda's heart went out to this girl who reminded her so much of herself all those years ago. "Come inside. Let me get you something to eat and we will talk." Over tea and fresh bread, Margaret told her story. She had been working as a seamstress in St. Louis, barely making enough to survive. When she saw Mr. Patterson's advertisement, it had seemed like an answer to prayer. Now she found herself stranded in a strange place with no prospects and no way home. "I understand what you are going through more than you might think," Zelda said gently. "I came here under similar circumstances 27 years ago. I was frightened and alone, and I did not know what the future would hold. But I was fortunate enough to marry a good man who treated me with kindness and respect." "Everyone speaks highly of you and Mr. Zimmer," Margaret said. "They said if anyone would understand my situation, it would be you." When Kieran came in from work, Zelda explained the situation. Without hesitation, he offered Margaret a place to stay in their spare room until she could figure out her next steps. Over dinner, they learned that Margaret was skilled not only in sewing but also in bookkeeping, having helped manage the accounts for the dress shop where she worked. "We could use someone to help with the ranch accounts," Thomas said thoughtfully. "Emma and I have been struggling to keep up with the bookwork on top of everything else." And so Margaret stayed, earning her keep by managing the ranch books and helping Zelda around the house. But Zelda noticed that her son William seemed to find excuses to visit the ranch more often, and Margaret always seemed particularly interested in hearing about his music students. "You are matchmaking," Kieran accused his wife one evening with amusement. "I am simply observing that two young people seem to enjoy each other's company," Zelda said innocently. "Just like we enjoyed each other's company. Exactly like that." 6 months later, William and Alice's marriage had run its course. Alice had never truly adapted to life in the West and wanted to return to Chicago. The parting was sad but amicable, and Zelda felt for her son as he worked through his heartbreak. But she also noticed that Margaret seemed to be exactly the right person to help him heal, listening to his music with genuine appreciation, and understanding his love for teaching in a way Alice never had. A year after Margaret's arrival, William and Margaret were married in a quiet ceremony at the ranch. Zelda watched with joy as the young woman who had arrived lost and frightened became part of their family. It felt like the circle completing itself somehow, as if her own story was being reflected back to her in a new generation. By 1910, the Zimmer family had expanded significantly. Thomas and Emma had 5 children, ages 2 to 16. Sarah and Daniel had 3 boys who were all showing interest in working with animals. William and Margaret had twin girls who were the delight of everyone's hearts. The ranch now stretched across several thousand acres, and the Zimmer name was synonymous with quality horses throughout the territory. Kieran was slowing down more noticeably now, his joints stiff on cold mornings, his energy not what it once was. But his mind remained sharp, and his love for Zelda had only deepened with time. They spent more time together, taking walks around the ranch property, reminiscing about the early days, marveling at everything they had built. One evening as they sat on the porch watching another sunset, Kieran took Zelda's hand. "I have been thinking about legacy lately." "What about it?" "What we leave behind, what people will remember about us." He gestured to the ranch spread out before them. "All of this will continue after we are gone. Thomas will run it and his children after him. The Double Z Ranch will be part of this land for generations." "But that is not what I am most proud of." "No," Zelda squeezed his hand. "No, I am most proud of the family we created, not just the children and grandchildren, though they are wonderful, but the way we built something based on love and respect and partnership. The way we proved that a marriage between strangers could become something real and lasting. The way we showed our children what a healthy relationship looks like, so they could build healthy relationships of their own. Tears pricked Zelda's eyes. We did do that, did we not? We did. And I think about that girl who stepped off the stagecoach 32 years ago, so convinced she was worthless. And I am so grateful she took a chance on a lonely Cowboy's advertisement, because she turned out to be the most valuable thing that ever happened to me. You gave me everything, Zelda said softly. A home, a family, a life worth living. But most importantly, you gave me back my sense of self-worth. You taught me that I deserve to be treated with kindness. You showed me what love is supposed to look like. We taught each other. Kieran raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. And we are still teaching each other, even now. In 1912, the family gathered for a major celebration. Kieran and Zelda had been married for 34 years, and the whole family came together to honor them. Children, grandchildren, even great-grandchildren now, filled the house and yard. There was food and music and laughter, and Zelda felt her heart might burst with happiness. Thomas stood up to give a toast. To my parents, who showed me what a marriage should be. Who built this ranch from nothing through hard work and determination. Who created a home filled with love that has sheltered 3 generations now. And who proved that sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance on the unknown. Everyone raised their glasses, and Zelda found herself crying again, happy tears that Kieran gently wiped away. 34 years, she murmured to him. Can you believe it? Feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. He pulled her close. And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. As the party continued around them, they slipped away for a moment of quiet. They walked to the spot where Kieran had first brought her when she arrived, the rise where you could see the whole ranch spread out below. Remember what you said when we stood here the first time? Kieran asked. I said it was wonderful. Zelda smiled at the memory. I meant it then, and I mean it even more now. I told you I hoped you would come to think of it as home. I did. I do. This land, this place, but most of all you. You are my home, Kieran. Wherever you are, that is where I belong. He wrapped his arms around her, and they stood there together as the sun set, watching the lights come on in their house where their family gathered. The Double Z Ranch, built on hope and watered with love, flourished around them. You are priceless to me, Kieran said, as he had said so many times before. Always. And you to me, Zelda replied, as she always did. Always. The years that followed were gentler, slower. Kieran's health declined gradually, and Zelda tended to him with the same devotion he had always shown her. Even when his body weakened, his mind remained clear, and his love for her never wavered. He spent his days in a chair on the porch, watching the ranch operate, offering advice when asked, but mostly just content to observe the life he had built continuing without him. In 1915, on a clear autumn morning, Kieran passed away peacefully in his sleep with Zelda beside him. He was 62 years old. The funeral drew people from all over the territory, a testament to the respect he had earned over his lifetime. But for Zelda, the loss was profound. She had spent 37 years with this man, had built her entire adult life around their partnership. The world felt dimmer without him in it, but she was not alone. Her children surrounded her with love and support. Her grandchildren brought her joy with their visits and their stories. And Margaret, who had become like a daughter to her, made sure she was never lonely or in need. You taught me what it means to be truly valued, Margaret said one day as they sat together. When I arrived here lost and frightened, you showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. You gave me a place to belong. You helped me see that my worth was not determined by my circumstances, but by who I chose to be. Zelda smiled, recognizing the echo of her own journey. Kieran taught me the same thing. And now we pass that lesson on to the next generation. That is how we honor those who loved us. Zelda lived for another 8 years after Kieran's death. She remained active on the ranch, teaching her grandchildren about gardening, about resilience, about the importance of treating people with dignity and respect. She told them stories about their grandfather, keeping his memory alive. And she continued the tradition of helping mail-order brides who found themselves in difficult situations, offering them the same support she had once received. In 1923, at the age of 68, Zelda passed away peacefully, surrounded by her family. She was buried beside Kieran on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over the land they had built together for eternity. The Double Z Ranch continued to thrive under Thomas's management and eventually passed to his children. But more than the land or the buildings or the livestock, the true legacy of Kieran and Zelda Zimmer was the example they set. They showed that love could bloom between strangers, that kindness mattered more than grand gestures, that a person's worth was inherent, not something that could be given or taken away by others. The gold locket Kieran had given Zelda on their 10th anniversary was passed down through the generations, each recipient learning the story of the mail-order bride who was told she was worthless, and the cowboy who said she was priceless. It became a symbol of the family's values, a reminder that love and respect form the foundation of everything worthwhile. And on quiet evenings, when family gathered on the porch of the old ranch house, they would look up at the hill where Kieran and Zelda were buried and remember. They would remember the bravery it took for a young woman to answer an advertisement from a stranger. They would remember the kindness of a cowboy who saw value where others saw none. They would remember a love story that proved worth is not assigned by others, but recognized by those wise enough to see it. The story of Kieran and Zelda Zimmer became legend in Deadwood, told and retold with each generation. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with grand romance, but with simple human decency. That kindness can heal old wounds, that a person who has been broken can become whole again in the presence of genuine love. And most importantly, it reminded everyone who heard it that no person is worthless. Every human being has value, has worth, has the potential to build something beautiful if given the chance. All it takes is someone willing to see that potential, to nurture it, to declare with conviction that you are priceless to me always. That was the true legacy of the mail-order bride and the cowboy who loved her. Not the land they claimed or the wealth they accumulated, but the love they shared and the lesson they taught. A lesson that echoed through the generations long after they were gone, a testament to the transformative power of genuine love and unwavering respect. In the end, Zelda Vaughn Zimmer's journey from worthless to priceless was not just her story. It was a story that repeated itself in different forms through the years. Every person helped by her kindness, every mail-order bride she assisted, every grandchild who learned from her example carried forward the truth she had discovered in that dusty town in South Dakota so many years ago. Worth is not something others can determine. It is inherent in every human being, waiting to be recognized by someone with eyes to see it. And once seen, once acknowledged, once celebrated, it can blossom into something extraordinary. Something that lasts long after we are gone. Something that changes not just one life but ripples outward through generations, touching countless others in ways we can never fully measure. That was what Kieran gave Zelda, and what Zelda, in turn, gave to so many others. The gift of being seen, being valued, being loved for exactly who she was. And in a world that could be cruel and harsh, especially on the frontier, that gift was truly priceless. Always.